Hello everyone, welcome back to another lecture on electricity and magnetism. And today's class is lecture number 24. The last lecture in particular we have seen through the Google Meet, and we have derived the Ohm's law for the case of electrical conductor. And we have also seen the distinction between the convection in the case of the charge movements in the case of plasma, or in the case of gas or liquids. So in general it is known as convection. So you don't have to worry about the words plasma, etc. Basically it is the convection of the electrical charges that we have discussed in the last class. And when the medium in which the charges are moving happens to be a liquid, gas or plasma, then we say that they are known as the convection current. But if you are going to consider good electrical conductors, then the current is then known as conduction current instead of convection current. So that difference is what we have seen in the last class. And during that discussion, we have also derived an expression for the electrical conductivity. And that expression is what is known as the Ohm's law for electrical conductors. So especially we have written this particular equation, J is equal to sigma times E. This is what exactly we have derived in the last class. And in this derivation, this sigma is the quantity what is known as the electrical conductivity, and the expression we obtained in the last class was N into E square into tau divided by M. So where small n is the number density of electron, small e represents the electronic charge, tau represents the relaxation time, that means the time between collisions, and M is the mass of the electron. So this gives you a very good approximation for the electrical conductivity of the metals, because the good conductors, right, it's metals. So that is what is all about the last class work. And even before the last class, we have discussed something on the Gauss law, and we have also established what is Gauss law in the differential form. Okay, namely the divergence of the electric field is equal to rho divided by epsilon 0. That is the equation that we have got, or we have derived in the previous to last class. At that time, I told that we are going to convert the same Gauss law in an integral form. Okay, but before doing the integral form of the Gauss law, we need some basics of vector calculus. Okay, because this particular course, namely PHOS 232, happens to be at the very second year after the school, higher secondary school. A knowledge of the vector calculus may be going parallelly in your mathematics department, or that you might not have completed the vector calculus chapter in your syllabus. So in such situations, following the Gauss law problem may be somewhat uncomfortable, and therefore in today's lecture I am planning to give you a brief introduction to the vector calculus, an overall idea, and which is sufficient enough to grasp what is happening in the conversion of the differential form of the Gauss law to the integral form of the Gauss law. So that is the today's plan of the lecture. Okay, so let us go to the board and see the details. Now we'll coming back to the previous class. We have already seen what is meant by Gauss law. That means even before the last class by Google Meet. So okay, we have derived the Gauss law actually. And if you remember, what we have done is we have established this equation, namely the divergence of the electric field is equal to rho by epsilon naught. This equation we have derived. So at the end of this particular lecture, I said that this divergence expression, namely the differential expression, can be rewritten in the integral form. And if you do that, then that is known as the integral form of the Gauss law. So you can always write down the equation in two different ways. One is the differential notation. The other one is the integral notation. So the conversion should be comfortable for you. And then we can apply the appropriate form, whichever is comfortable for you, to a given problem. That is the idea. So why do you want to have two types of forms, namely the differential form and the integral form, is that sometimes one or the other form is more convenient to work with the equations. So whenever we are feeling comfortable, we will choose either this form or that form. That is the reason why we have two of the forms. So the first question is that how do you rewrite this equation into the integral notation? So for that, we need to have some refreshment on the vector calculus if it is already done. Sometimes what happens is vector calculus is there in your syllabus, but you'll have to, you might not have completed the topic of vector calculus in your mathematics department. In such cases, it will be comfortable if we make a small review of this vector calculus and then understand what is happening by in the case of the rewriting of the differential to the integral notation, how it is rewritten without any difficulties and without any need for the memorizing certain equations. We can easily understand. That is the point. So our point should be clear, that we would like to understand things easily and we don't want to memorize anything. That is the idea. So this equation, anyway, you have this, namely the divergence of E equal to rho by epsilon naught. At that particular time, I assumed that you know the definition of the divergence, etc. But now, since a proper introduction to the vector calculus is going to help you, I thought that this class I will do that. Okay, so let me therefore explain and come to this. So coming to this, let us start with what is known as a scalar. You have a simple scalar which is a constant. So let me say that this is a constant. And from here we are going to move. So if you are going to have a scalar, this is the first option that you can have. The second option is a constant at a point. Let me write down at a point is important. So I'll write down that. The second point is it is a scalar which is also going to be a constant in a region of space. So there is a difference between them. Then the third one, once you have this, the same thing is applicable for the case of vectors. You can have a vector and that vector can be a constant vector. It can be a constant vector at a point. And the fourth option is, other possibility is that similarly you can have a vector, but it will be a constant in a region of space. So once you understand all these things, then we can give an appropriate technical terms for this, namely the mathematical name for this. Let us understand the first one. What is the meaning of saying a scalar at a particular point is that in a region of space. In a region of space means I am simply drawing a graph with the x comma y axis here. And then you have an origin, and then say that at some point, at whatever be the point, at this particular point, I say that the temperature is equal to 100 degrees centigrade. So 100 degrees centigrade is existing only at a one point. If you come outside that point, 100 degrees centigrade will not be there. That is the meaning. So you say that one particular tip or one particular point in the space is always at 100 degrees centigrade. It doesn't change. Such information is what is known as a constant scalar at a point. So at a point is the place where you have to give importance. The second example is it is a constant but in a region of space. So in a region of space means similarly when you draw a graph, whatever it is, and then you will be having an interest to discuss at a particular point. So the point is denoted by a dot here, and surrounding this dot you have some region. So this entire region that we are going to have here, the whole region is maintained at a constant temperature. We say that everywhere inside this you maintain temperature equal to 100 degrees centigrade. So this is the example of the second one where you say the region of space. So whenever you talk a region of the space, this is the place where you have to see the terminology. This is known as a field. Because I want to explain why you are going to use the word field. You say electric field, magnetic field. So why the word field is used, that is the terminology. And similarly in the case of the vector calculus also, you always study like this. Consider, let us say that A and B are two vector fields. Then we can do the following. Like this you will be studying in the vector calculus. So the word field will come so frequently. So in order to understand what is the meaning of the field, this explanation will give you a clear understanding. In a region of space is what is known as field. If you are not interested in a surrounding region of space, instead of that I am interested in only one point. One point means something like a tip of a ballpoint pen. Only one tip, that is known as a point. Then we will not say it's a field. Field means it should be surrounding region. Some region should be there surrounding a point. Only then we say it's a field. Now the field terminology is clear, and then you can attach a word constant field or variable field. Okay, that is what is the next step. So now the first 2 points are clear. 1 and 2 explanation is clear. Now coming to the 3 and 4, okay, 3 you can easily understand. At a particular point you have a vector quantity. Now let us understand what is the constant vector in a region of space. In a region of space means in some region of space like this, in the same way like this, I have the same vector everywhere. That everywhere is what is known as the field. Okay, so if I am going to choose this point, this is the vector. I don't know whether anybody is asking to join the meeting. Okay, sometimes somebody will ask for joining the meeting. If anything is there, one notification will come. So, okay, nothing is there. Okay, so if you are going to choose this point, once again same vector will be there. If you are going to choose this point, same vector will be there. If you choose this point, same vector. Same vector means length of the vector should be same, direction should also be the same. If the direction and the length of the arrow is same, then we say same vector. If you choose this place, same. So like this, you show any point within the region of space, then you can actually copy the same vector everywhere. If this happens to you, then we say that this is a constant vector field. We say that this is known as the uniform. There is another name is there, uniform vector field. So this is the terminology. Uniform vector field is very important. In many cases, especially if you are going to study electromagnetism, you will always study uniform electric field, uniform magnetic field. What is the meaning is, in a given region of space, everywhere in the point, that is within the region of space, you show any point, in that particular point, the vector is the same vector that will be repeating. That means you will be having the same value and the same magnitude everywhere. Such vector fields are known as uniform vector fields. So that is clear, and we will be dealing with uniform vector fields in many places in the electricity and magnetism course. So this terminology is important. Now once this is clear, the next one comes to functions. We say that this is known as the scalar functions. Scalar function field. And similarly, you can have a vector function field. So what is the difference between the previous one and the present one is that in the previous one, everything was constant, nothing will change. Therefore, they are known as uniform field or constant field. This time what happens is function. The word function indicates that it is variable. So that is the difference. So instead of saying that it is a scalar function field, for simplicity, we say that it is scalar field. The word function will not be used many times because it is unnecessary. Everyone understands that field means over a region of space. Over a region of space means automatically x comma y comes into picture. So therefore, when you say that it is a function of x, y, z, it also means that you are going to discuss the value at different points x comma y comma z. That is why the word function is not frequently used. It is an additional term that can be neglected. So if you remove the word function here, then what is left out is only scalar field. So similarly here also we will be having the vector field. Mathematically, how do you write is, mathematically you can write down a is a vector, and now this is a function, right? Function only, it is called variable. Function field is what is written as inside bracket. So we say that a of x comma y comma z. So because you are writing inside the brackets, you say it's a function, which automatically means that it is going to be a variable one. Similarly, for the case of the temperature, because it is a scalar, I will use temperature as an example because temperature is a scalar, which is comfortable for you to realize and understand what it is. And temperature is a function of x comma y comma z. So that means if you move from one place to the other place, temperature changes. That is the meaning, T of x comma y comma z. So scalar field is clear, vector field is clear. And whenever you are going to deal with the vector calculus, we will be always saying that consider a vector field A consider a vector field B, consider a scalar field F. Like this only we will say. Then you have to understand what is the meaning of field. So this explanation will give you an introduction to understanding the meaning of vector field and scalar field. There is nothing complicated. The meaning is that A has to be explicitly written down as a function of x, y, z. But every time we don't have to write. Once you understand that A is a function of x, y, z, it's okay. Afterwards, you write only capital A. Because you already understood that it is a function of x, y, z, then we can proceed for further calculation. But when you are learning for the first time, we always say that B is a function of x, y, z. Like this, you explicitly write down. And similarly, you also say that this is a scalar function F, like a temperature, as a function of x, y, z. So ultimately, these are the examples of fields that you can have in mathematics. Okay, this field is something different from, there is another field that is also used in abstract algebra. So that field is completely different. So let us not confuse with that. You will be studying what is known as an abstract algebra, where you study groups, ring, field, etc. Okay, that field is different from this field. So that clarity, let it be there. We are not going to discuss about that because we are not planning to do anything with the abstract algebra and the group theory. So there is no confusion with that field. Okay, so right now within our topic of interest, the meaning of field is, this is the meaning of field. Whether it is physically you are going to discuss or mathematically you are going to discuss, the terminology is same. Only thing is, you can say that A vector can be electric field, B vector can be magnetic field, F scalar can be temperature, F scalar can be pressure. So these are possible examples that you can give, but mathematically you can have the same concept that is applicable. So this is clear. Now once this is clear, now the next comes, what are the possible operations that you can do. You know very well that if you have two vectors A and B, I'll write down like this. You already know this. When you have two vectors A and B, what are possible and what is not possible, you already know. You can do this A dot B. Similarly, you can perform an A cross B, but simply you cannot write AB. So this one we don't consider, right? What kind of product is this? That is not clear. And therefore, you already know that these are the two possible operations that are admissible. Similarly, you can multiply. These are the one thing. Similarly, if you have a scalar like this, you can always multiply by a vector this A. So this is also possible. Okay, and there is no need for a dot and a cross here. Therefore, all of them have the same meaning for this. So this is also possible. If you perform this kind of operations, and one more thing is not possible is this, A divided by B. So I'll write down A by B. You can't divide by a vector. You can of course divide by a magnitude of a vector. Automatically it becomes scalar. So therefore this is also undefined. So what you already know is that if you have a vector and scalar, you can perform some mathematical operations, and that is clear. Now the question is this: if you do these kinds of calculations, then it is known as the vector algebra. Now instead of algebra, we want to do calculus. That is the only change. So you can easily understand for the vector calculus what is changing. Instead of doing algebraic operations like multiplication and division, we have to now perform calculus operations, which means differentiation and integration. So we are interested to do that. If you do that, it is known as vector calculus. So therefore, we need a vector operator. First thing is differentiation. If you want to perform a differentiation, in the case of the scalar, what happens is d by dx you have. It's a scalar function is there. I can always take dy by dx. If y is the function, which is a scalar function, dy by dx is the differentiation. And this tells you what is the operator. You have to identify operator from this. So d by dx is the operator. That is what you have to identify. If you identify this, the next step is, what is the corresponding operator in the vector field? This is for the scalars. For the case of vectors, how will you write down the similar derivatives? That is the question. And you already know, of course, it's quite simple. If you have not done, it is easy to write down directly by extension. But if you already studied, you have to now refresh your memory how the extension is coming from scalar to the vectors. So scalar represents only for one variable, therefore you have a dy by dx only. But now, because vector quantity represent the direction also, that means x, y, z direction also, you have to attach the direction along with the derivative. So therefore, derivative is there dou by dou x, that is fine, but where is the direction? Therefore, you attach the unit vector corresponding to this. Then this will be an extension of, so we are moving from scalar to the vector concept. When you are moving from scalar to the vector concept, we have to attach a vector corresponding to that direction, and the derivative naturally happens to be a partial derivative. You cannot write total derivative. So you can easily understand what is the difference between partial and total derivative. Partial derivative means there is a partial contribution. Suppose if you want to do some work, some work I want 20,000 rupees, means 20,000 rupees an individual cannot give. Then what happens is 3 people are there. Then you say that okay, let all 3 of us together make 20,000, which means that one fellow has to give 10,000, another fellow has to give 15,000. Then whatever remains is there, the third person has to give. So if you are going to give like this, that means 10 plus 5 plus 5, whatever combination. First fellow gives 10,000, second 5, and third 5. If you give something like that, I can make up the 20. That means the contribution of 5,000 rupees is known as partial contribution. He didn't give the total money, right? It is partial. That means part of the money. That is why it is called partial derivative. Therefore, the vector, this derivative comes from the x direction only. That means from one person in the x direction. Then plus, similarly, this has to be contributed by the second fellow in the y direction, third fellow in the z direction. Therefore, we will write like this: plus ay unit vector, corresponding component or corresponding contribution will be dou by dou y, plus az into corresponding contribution will be dou y by dou z. So this is known as the corresponding operator. Now, here you have to be careful that because of this reason only I have introduced the concept of operator. If you write only dy by dx, it is not operator. Okay, it is ultimately this will give you a function or a value. Okay, if you don't apply it on the y, that means this particular dependent variable, then only dy by dx is known as the operator. Similarly, you don't operate it on anything, then it is called operator. So this is known as the vector operator, and in particular, this is given the name del operator. The reason why it is given the name del operator is because of the symbol. The symbol for the del operator is delta. Because it is delta, this is known as del operator. That's just a name. Because of the delta, it's coming into picture. Okay. So, and it is written like this with an inverted triangle, not this delta. So there is another confusion. In Greek letters, you already know that this is delta. That's fine. This is also delta. These two are known as the delta actually. But however, this is not the operator here. Okay. So that is why this is not known as delta operator. It is not known as delta operator, but it is known as del operator. So it is just another name because this delta is what is inverted here to bring another symbol. We don't want to use triangle and put an arrow here. That looks ugly. So that is why people have not chosen this particular symbol. So the name of the operator or the traditional symbol for this is the del operator. And you can easily see that this is nothing but it is the extension from the scalar field to the case of the vector field. So now what is an advantage is that instead of writing this big expression from here to here, you can write in a compact notation that del operator, which means that we can say that del is an operator which is a function of x, y, z. This is a function of x, y, z. At the same time, it is a vector. So that is important. It's a function of x, y, z because you are differentiating with respect to x, y, z. It is a vector because unit vectors ax, ay, az are attached to that. So both the informations are available here. So this is the standard del operator which we will be using for differentiating the vector quantities. In addition, you will be having an integral operator. But let us first finish what can be done with the derivative. And then we will come to the integral operator. Once these two things are clear, we will understand what are the possible types of operations that can be done if we have vectors and operators. So the objective and the aim should be clear. If the aim is not clear, then you also will not be know what exactly we are talking. So our aim is clear. Our aim is, suppose if I have a vector field A, suppose if I have a vector field B, if I also have a scalar field F, and if I have a del operator in a corresponding what do you call the vector calculus operator, del operator, if I have all of them with me, then what I can do? That is the question. I have two vector fields AB. Here it is. I have two vector fields AB, one scalar field and one differentiation operator, del operator. So what are the possible mathematical operations can I do? That is the question. And if you can easily understand this, then you also can understand how the integral operators are performed. And once these two things are clear to you, it will be very comfortable for you to understand how to convert the differential form of the Gauss law to the integral form of the Gauss law. So the purpose of the explanation is to make things easy to follow. That is the amazing. Otherwise, there is, without explaining, we can always write down that, okay, by converting this, we get this integral form. In 2 lines, we can write. But however, this explanation provides you, you feel more comfortable to understand and proceed deeper into the subject. Okay, so let us come back to this. So we have ABC, etc. Now I want to perform the del operator, which means that can you perform this operator on a scalar? So sometimes possible, sometimes not possible. So if I am going to perform it on a scalar, for example, should I put a dot? Should I put a cross product? That is a question that it comes. And for the time being, since we do not know whether to put a dot or not, we will write down the expanded version of that. So what is the expanded version of that? You write down like this. Ax you write down, then dou by dou x, then plus ay dou by dou y plus az dou by dou z. That this is an operator operating on a function f of x comma y comma z, because f is a function of x, y, z. Now the question is whether you have to put a dot here, or should I put a cross, or nothing should be there. So which one is correct? Is this one or this one or this one? That is the question that we are asking. And what we understand is that once you write down this particular expression, it is clear that this f is a scalar function. If you perform this, dou f by dou z. Dou f by dou z is clear, and you already know that dou f by dou f can be calculated, because scalar calculus you already know. So you can tell whether dou f by dou z can be evaluated or it is a meaningless operator. That is what you have to tell. Now since dou f by dou z is a meaningful operator, you agree that it is fine. Then similarly, you take the f to this particular place. You can also calculate dou f by dou y. Similarly, take the f to this particular place. So everything is meaningful, and therefore there is no need for an additional dot or an additional cross. So therefore nothing is required. If you can simply write down gradient of the del of the f here, and it is a meaningful operator. Therefore we can finally conclude that this expression will give you ax cap dou f by dou x. Ax, ay, of course, you know that the unit vectors in the respective x, y, z directions. Then plus az into dou f by dou z. And that's all. And you already know what kind of object is this. Is the entire quantity is a scalar, or the entire quantity is a vector. So it is very clear that this is a vector quantity, because ax unit vector is there, ay unit vector is there, az unit vector is there. Therefore this must be a vector quantity. But however, since the partial derivatives are there, ultimately after finishing the differentiation, final answer will be a function of x comma y comma z. Therefore this final simplified expression will be a vector field. Instead of saying that it is a constant vector, we will say it is a vector field, because it's a function of. Once you say that it is a vector function, then it is known as vector field. And on the left hand side, you have this kind of a del operator operating on a scalar. So this is our important conclusion. The conclusion is that it is possible to perform the vector differentiation on a scalar. So conclusion should be clear. It is possible to perform vector differentiation on a scalar. Okay, vector differential operator. And this object, whatever that you have, is known as the gradient. So this is known as gradient. So we can understand why it is called gradient. That is only a geometric interpretation. Why people use the word gradient for this. It only talks about the slope. That's why it's called gradient. Okay. For easy understanding, maybe I can represent like this. If you are going to consider something like this, I am trying to explain why we use the word gradient for the del of f. Okay, the answer is quite simple. After finishing the gradient, you get some expression, right? So that represents the slope actually. So what is the slope is? This is the place where you can see the slope. And this particular region where you are going to climb, suppose you are going to climb on this, for example, then we say that you are climbing on a gradient. So this is what is known as the gradient. Slope is the word that is used only for only one line. A line should be there. Then we can talk about the slope. Now this is not a line. This fellow is not walking on a line, right? He must be walking on a surface. So therefore, certainly you are now extending the one-dimensional line to the two-dimensional surface. Okay, so that is why the name slope is also changing. We should not say that it is the slope of the two-dimensional surface. There is no meaning. We have to say that the slope of a particular line. Okay, once you draw the tangent, then afterwards you have to catch the line and then talk about the slope. So therefore, gradient represent therefore generalized version, or we say that the three-dimensional extension of the slope. So this is how you can understand. And what is changing if you are going to walk along this? Height will change. So height will uniformly change if you are going to go up or come down. We say that this fellow is now walking on a gradient. Now similarly, the gradient can be used in many places. If you move along a particular surface of hot rod, for example, then we say that the temperature will reduce. Okay, like this you can, this is a general thing. You can use it for anything and then you talk about. For example, I am going to heat here. Okay, so I am going to heat this particular rod. So this particular rod I'll heat. Then what happens? This is the place where you will be very hot. Then here in this particular region you will be having less hot. And in this particular region it is approaching to room temperature, approximately room temperature. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is, if we are going to move in this direction, what will reduce? Temperature will reduce. So we say that our conclusion is there is a temperature gradient. So gradient is a general name. Okay. So whenever something is changing as we move along, then we say that there is a gradient. In the first example, this is the first example, height is changing. In the second example, temperature is changing. Similarly, electric field can change, or any other quantity which is changing in its particular component. Electric field is a vector quantity, so you have to be careful there. You cannot say that the vector quantity is changing. You can only tell in a given direction, because I am putting arrow, you see. This arrow, once you am saying that these arrows are there in a particular direction. Similarly, this fellow is climbing means there is a direction. So specific direction he is climbing. Therefore, what happens is that even though when you talk about a vector is equal to ax into ax, this is unit vector, we are talking about this ax. That should be this one. Okay, this unit vector, what happened? This unit vector is already taken care, because he is walking in a particular direction, right? That direction is already fixed. Then what is changing? What is changing is that component, the corresponding, this component is only changing. So similarly, when the rod is along the x-axis, you remember that this is x-axis. So already x-axis is there. You should not therefore confuse with the temperature with the vector quantity. It is the temperature along the x direction. So that clarity should be there. So what is changing is actually a scalar quantity, but it is changing in the x direction. So because the rod is oriented along the x direction, we have to use this kind of terminology. So our conclusion is therefore, we must have a scalar quantity like this, and if you perform a del operator on that, this will represent something that is changing, and therefore this is known as the gradient operator. So ultimately, finally, the whole thing is known as the gradient. So this is the first requirement when you are going to deal with the vector calculus. First thing that you will be learning is gradient. Gradient is very important because it represents a lot of geometrical interpretations. That is why it is very important. It gives you information about the direction, and therefore this directional property has led people to give the name directional derivative. You should know that there is another name for this, is the directional derivative. So because of the arrow, you see, once again I am putting arrows here, right? So because the arrows are associated, when you are talking about the what is changing, we say that it is directional. In that direction it changes. That is why the term directional derivative that is used whenever you perform this operation. This particular directional derivative is very, very important because this is the one which is useful to generate the unit vector of a surface. This is very important. Why it is so important is, if I give you a surface to you, any surface, can be sphere, can be cylinder, or some kind of arbitrary shape. I'll give one plane to you, otherwise a planar surface. Find out the unit normal to that particular surface. How will you find? Okay, how will you find means you have to evaluate this gradient. So this directional derivative concept is very important if you want to generate the unit vector for a given surface. Okay, so that is why there are important concepts are there that are associated with the geometrical properties of surfaces. So that is why this is very important. Okay, first thing you have done. So we have asked the question. Our question is, we have two vectors, we have one scalar, and also we have one differential operator. So what are the things that can be done? That was the question that we asked, and right now we have the answer. Only one answer we have, namely we can perform the gradient operator on the scalar. So that is the simplest thing that we started with. This is one operation. What about any other thing can we do? The answer is, since we have the del operator, we also have a vector like this. Okay, what can we do? We can either do a dot product like this, because you have to recall from your vector algebra, A dot B is meaningful. Therefore, this should also be meaningful. That is the first conclusion. Second thing is, if you have two vectors, the standard cross product we are doing in vector algebra. Therefore, now also we must be able to perform this. But if you are asking, can you do like this without dot and without cross? We don't have anything here. It is just you write a gradient and this kind of B. So right now we say that such kind of operations are not included in the standard vector calculus. Okay, so there is no standard meaning, direct meaning within the limits of vector calculus. We don't have any meaning for an object written like this, a gradient operator along with a B vector, without telling whether it is dot and cross. Such objects do not have any meaning. Therefore, we will not, neither we do this, or if you write this, then there is no meaning for this. So that is what we understand. So once this is clear, now we can see what will happen if I perform divergence of A. So the calculation is quite simple, because it is only a matter of writing down the expression for the del. So let me write down that AY times dou by dou y plus AZ times dou by dou z. So that is what is the del operator. Then dot, you write down dot. What is the expression for the A vector? A vector you already know, x component of the A, unit vector in the x direction, plus y component of A, unit vector in the y direction, plus AZ close bracket. So if you simplify this, simplification is easy because Dot product means only ax dot ax will be 1. All other components go to 0. And therefore, this simplification is quite easy. And we ultimately get like this: dou ax by dou x plus dou a by dou y plus dou az by dou z. So this is what we get after the simplification. And our conclusion, what is the conclusion, is that this quantity is a scalar. So the conclusion is important because you should know after finishing the divergence what will I get. That should be clear. If you say that something will come means, then you can't understand what is going to happen. So whenever you perform the divergence, our result will be always a scalar function. Either you say it's a scalar function or you say that it is a scalar field. Both are same. Here I have written both, scalar function field. Generally, both of them no need to write. If you want, you can delete the function and then say that scalar field. So this is one of the important conclusions from your calculation. And once again, we need to understand what is the meaning implied by this particular equation. So let us discuss what is the meaning of this equation. And you also ask the question, why you want to call this particular thing by a name, divergence. So this is what we are going to give the name. So this is known as the divergence. So the question always comes, why do you want to give the name divergence to this mathematical operation? That is a question. The answer comes naturally because of certain physical meaning, because you always understand what is meant by diverging. So diverging is something very easy to understand. You take, for example, a bulb. If you take a bulb, this is the bulb, for example, this one. You are now in a dark room, okay? You are staying in a dark room, and let us assume that inside this dark room, this particular bulb is kept in the middle of the room, okay? Middle of the room means not on the roof, not on the floor, not near the wall. You have to come to the center of the room, okay? So that is known as the body center. Center means not on the roof, okay? So you have to come down in such a way that you are in between the floor and the roof. Similarly, you have to come in the center point between the left side wall and the right side wall. That is what I mean to say. The center of the room, body center of the room. So such a bulb you have, and then you are completely in the dark, and now you are switching on the light. Then what will happen? So the light that is going to be generated from the bulb, it will travel in which direction? That is the question. The answer is that it travels in all possible direction. Okay, you should not say 360 degree. So this point I already explained some time back. 360 degree is applicable only if you are talking in a plane. Now it is not a plane. Your room is a three-dimensional space. So in the case of the three-dimensional space, 360 degree is wrong. All possible direction actually means that it is 4 pi steradians. If you want to tell so explicitly and accurately, you have to say that the light will travel in all possible 4 pi steradian solid angle. Like that you have to tell. But that looks a little bit uncomfortable, and therefore in plain English you can say it travels in all possible directions. In mathematics, what people say is that the light diverges in all direction. So it is the same English, but you try to put in a different style. We say that the light diverges in all possible direction. So you can now understand what is the meaning of the divergence. So this phenomenon is what is going to represent here. So therefore, mathematically you perform something. Mathematically I am taking a del operator here, and then a operator here, and then I do some dot operator, and that's all about it. I don't know whether light is diverging or not. So nothing, I am performing only a mathematical operation. Now what is that people have done is, we want to understand what mathematics is doing. So for that, we have to compare this with certain physical system. In which physical system do you have divergence? That's the question. Okay, you can't have divergence everywhere. If you have a pressure, for example, there is no code. You can't ask what is the divergence of pressure. No meaning. because divergence is a vector quantity, pressure is a scalar operator. So you can't do that. You can't take del dot. Del dot cannot be taken. You can take gradient, that is okay. Gradient you can always calculate. You cannot calculate del dot pressure. Such operation is meaningless, and therefore we will say that there is no meaning for asking what is the divergence of pressure. So now you understand what is the meaning of divergence. Divergence means something is moving out of the original point in all possible direction. See, this is the original point. This is the original point. All possible directions, light is going to travel in all possible direction. That means away from this. It is going to travel away from the bulb. That is important. Away from the bulb is one important point, and all possible is another important point. So both of them are happening, and therefore we say that when English equivalent word, so the so-called synonym, for example, is diverging. So diverging is an example. If you take a torch light, for example, instead of a light bulb, you take a torch light. And the torch light, when you shine a light, what happens is, now it will not go in all possible direction, but the light rays will be traveling like this. That's all. So only here, that much only light will travel. Now the light will not go like this. This is not possible. The torch light will not give you light in this direction. This is not possible. Whereas the torch light will generate the lights. All these things are possible. And now we say that the light is diverging. We say it is diverging because from one point, this is one point. Okay. So from one point, it is diverging to different directions. So these are the different directions. So it is not compulsory to have all the surrounding 360 degrees or the 4 pi steradian solid angle. That much is not required. But the moment it is deviating from the original line, then we say it is diverging. So the concept of the divergence is clear, and now immediately you should be in a position to tell whether divergence is there for electric field or not. You have to tell yes or not. Electric field is there. You take a plus Q. Take a plus Q is a positive charge. You put it here, and then you draw the electric field due to this plus Q charge. You already know how to draw. So electric field is in all possible directions like this for a positive charge. So therefore, what is your conclusion? The question is that now, do you have the divergence of the electric field, or is it a meaningless question? The answer is, since it is diverging, what is diverging? Electric field. Electric field is diverging from the single point here. We say that divergence of electric field is meaningful. And we can always ask the question, what is divergence? And the answer is what is already known to you. Now you go back. If you go back to the beginning of our discussion, you see here that our Gauss law, we have written down that the divergence of the electric field is equal to the rho by epsilon naught. That is what is the Gauss law. So basically it tells you, Gauss law really tells you how much the electric field is diverging from the point. What is the point? The charge is the point. When I say charge, it is already a point charge, and therefore it is diverging from the original point. How much it is diverging, that is the question, and the answer is given by the Gauss law, and that is exactly the rho by epsilon naught. That is what is the Gauss law. Ultimately, Gauss law is going to tell you how much the electric field is diverging from the point, and the answer is by an amount of rho by epsilon 0. So you can always understand the meaning of divergence, whether the light intensity, whether the light rays are diverging from a particular place, electric field can diverge, or you can have any arbitrary mathematical field without reference to any physics. You can always write down some mathematical equation, and then you can find out the divergence. It's possible. So that is the meaning. Now I want to tell another example where divergence is not there. So these are the examples where you can easily feel divergence is present. When divergence will be absent is an example is the laser beam. So what you do is, this is for the laser beam, if you ask what is the divergence, practically it is 0, but instead of saying exact 0, there may be some small number like 0.00. But for practical purposes to understand, if this is the laser that you are going to have like this, and if you ask the question that if I switch on the laser, the light is going to come like this, right? So the light that is going to come from the laser beam will be going straight in this direction, in one direction, that's all. So our conclusion is that we will be having the laser beam only along a particular line, only one line. Whether the laser beam will come here means no, it will not come. Laser beam won't come here. Will the laser beam come here? No, it won't come. Laser beam comes only in a straight. This is exactly opposite to the torchlight situation. Here you see in the torchlight that you will be able to spread the light. Okay, that is what is called divergence. The light naturally spreads, and the laser beam is the one where its divergence is 0. We say that it is the one in which we don't experience any divergence. So this is another example where divergence is not present. We say that mathematically you can say 0. Divergence of certain quantity is 0. Then we say that it is a divergence less quantity. Okay. So less is the word that you'll have to use in order to say 0. This is one example. Laser beam is one example. The second example, well, even though we have not moved to the magnetism, right now this is a good place to tell. In the case of bar magnet, take the case of the bar magnet and ask the question that somewhere you have the north and south pole, etc. And what happens is, you already know at least what is the magnetic field lines. You know that the magnetic field lines will be like this. That is clear, isn't it? So it comes like this and it comes like this. So these are the magnetic field lines, and you can always draw arrow like this. So what is the conclusion? I want to tell the important conclusion is, it appears as if it is diverging and going outside. You see here, it starts here and it looks as if it is diverging and going outside. But what happened, you have to see. But it follow like this, follow this line, and it comes here. After that, you have to be careful. After this, what happens, you have to see. After this, it travels inside like this, along a straight line like this, and then comes back to this original position. That is important. Always the textbook, what happens is, in the textbook they will draw the magnetic field line only outside. Inside the magnet, this horizontal line is there. That is very important. And similarly, this line is coming like this, right? And after that, what happens? And after that, this line comes like this and then touches here. And that is what is the magnetic field. This is the magnetic field line. So our conclusion, now you ask the question, do we have divergence of magnetic field? Yes or no? Yes means you have a non-zero value, answer. No means 0 is the answer. So the question is clear, that what will be the value for the divergence of the magnetic field. Now this particular diagram, clearly tells you that the magnetic field lines is apparently going outside, looks like it is diverging, but however, if you follow the line, it comes back to its original place. Therefore, it did not diverge. So the answer is that the divergence of the magnetic field is 0. So this is one of the very important equations in the electromagnetism, and this is one equation what is known as the Maxwell's equations. And this is a direct experimental evidence. People have done experiment. You can always take the iron filings. Okay, filing means a small, very small bits of iron, and then it should not go to the form of a powder, but it should be in the form of a small line. So filing and powder is different, right? Powder you already know, talcum powder, you use it, right, every day. If you take powder, then you cannot align it. Align means like this I want to keep. Can you keep a talcum powder like this? You can't keep. You can only keep like this. You can see the difference, right? So I want to have certain objects that are looking like small stick, very small stick. At the same time, its mass should be very small. Such things are known as filings. Iron filings, you get it. And then what will happen is that this is going to represent the direction, because it's a small arrow is there, small line. Small line means what? A small bit of iron. That small bit of iron is a line, straight line. Mathematically, it is a straight line, and that will represent a unit vector. That's very important. If you have a talcum powder like dot here, you can't say where is vector. To represent a vector, I need a small length. That is called unit length. Unit length will not be there. For iron filings, small length will be there. So those length will will come and join like this. In an experiment, you can do and then take a photograph of this actually. So therefore, it is an experimental observation. Whether it is Coulomb's law or the Biot-Savart law, whether it is this way or that way, everything is completely experimental evidence. And therefore, this gives you a clear indication that the divergence of the magnetic field is zero. And such fields, that is our, now we are going to make a conclusion. If the divergence of certain vector quantity is equal to zero, then that particular vector quantity is known as solenoidal field. Now once again the question comes, why people are using the word solenoidal? You can always say divergence less. That is fine. Divergence less is clear, very clear. But people use the word solenoidal because you must know what is a solenoid, because solenoid is something you must have already studied. So that is why the word is solenoidal. Solenoid is very simple. You know it. So just I will refresh your memory. You take a pencil, for example, I will draw a pencil like this. Take a pencil and then take a wire and then wind it on this. So take a wire and wind on this particular pencil or whatever insulating material that you have. You wind it like this and take it out. That's all. So now you can pass the current in this. The current will come out like this. This kind of arrangement, that means a wire, it was a straight wire only, but now you have wounded it on a particular round shaped object like pencil. And in case if you are going to remove this pencil out, then what is left out? You are going to have something like spring, the usual spring that you have seen that you are using in a ballpoint pen. It looks like that, but the wires are too closed. You should not have like this. That kind of spring, no, this is not. So the point is that I am trying to explain that the first wire, the second wire, third wire, it should be very, very closely spaced. If you are going to make such an arrangement like this is known as solenoid. And if you pass the current I, you pass the current through the solenoid, what happens is you get identically the same magnetic field here. That means whatever magnetic field that you got here in this bar magnet, same magnetic field will come here. That means you can always draw the magnetic field like this. That is why mathematically this particular field is also known as solenoidal field. So solenoidal field is a mathematical term. They are also in mathematics also the same term is used. The reason why solenoid has come is because of this particular apparatus that you make out of a simple wire by winding is known as a solenoid. Magnetic field generated in a solenoid happens to be the one with zero divergence, and therefore any vector field, remember not only for magnetic field, now we are coming to a general one, any vector field whose divergence is equal to zero, such vector fields are known as solenoidal vector fields. So this is our second important conclusion. So probably now what we have done is that we have started with the let us see where we have stopped. Yeah, so we have started with the concept of the vector field. Then we asked what kind of calculus operations can be performed. We can perform both the differential operator and integral operator, both can be done. We have started with the differential operator, namely the del operator. We have seen how to operate it on scalar, that is what is visible right now. And then we have also seen how to perform the dot operator, this one. The dot operator also we have seen, we have completed. Okay, but however, what is pending, what is to be explained still is that we have to understand what is meant by the curl operator. So after finishing the curl operator, we will see the integral operators. Once the integral operators are there and the differential operators are there side by side, then immediately we can ask what are the possible things that can be done by combining these two things. And that is what we will do in the next class. And hopefully I think in the next class we can finish that, because only one differential operator is pending now, and then we can quickly go to the integral operator. And once we finish the integral operator, we are ready to convert the differential form of the Gauss law to the integral form. Okay, I think that part we will do in the next class.